Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got something really incredibly special for you today.
We really do. This one is going to change how you look at a lot of things.
Yeah, so welcome to you, the learner. Our mission today is to explore this fascinating intersection. It's the place where practical, hands-on, dirt under your fingernails gardening completely collides with ancient cosmic rhythms.
It really challenges the modern perspective, doesn't it? I mean, we are bridging the gap between very tactile, everyday backyard projects and the massive gravitational forces of the universe.
Right. It forces you to look at the ground beneath your feet in just an entirely new light.
Absolutely.
To anchor this whole exploration, we are following a fantastic story from our sources about two young boys. Their names are Kesser and Steen.
They're students in a nature and innovation class.
Exactly. And right now, they're gearing up to head out into the backyard to transplant some fruit bush cuttings. Cuttings they actually took last season for an organic kitchen garden.
But before they get their hands dirty, they sit down for a cup of tea.
Yeah, tea with a grandmother figure named Oma. And what starts as this cozy kitchen chat turns into a mind-bending lesson about planting according to the moon.
Which is a journey that involves ancient human history, an influential philosopher from the 1920s, and a female scientist who literally spent 50 years weighing carrots to prove a point.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the actual physical reality of what these boys are trying to do in the dirt.
Let us look at the practical situation Kesser and Steen are dealing with first, before we get to the cosmic side of things.
Right.
Last year, they took cuttings of fruit bushes, specifically blackcurrant and redcurrant. They placed them in some moist soil out in the garden, really just hoping the cuttings would begin to root over the winter.
But nature is rarely that accommodating, right? The winter was absolutely brutal.
Oh yeah, heavy rain, massive piles of snow.
Yeah, dumping right where these tiny, vulnerable cuttings were sitting. They basically drowned. It was a terrible situation for a young plant.
Yet amazingly, they survived. They are clinging to life. And Steen is incredibly eager to get an organic kitchen garden going at his own family's home.
He wants to move these surviving cuttings into pots.
Exactly, to give them a fighting chance.
And this is where Oma's intensely practical old-school wisdom comes in. If you look at a modern gardening store catalog today, it's just bursting with expensive things.
Gadgets, specialized soils, chemical fertilizers.
Right, all the stuff you supposedly must buy to succeed.
Yeah.
But Oma ignores all of that. She insists on using her homemade, absolutely free seaweed compost, Tang compost.
It's brilliant. She points out that if the texture isn't quite right, you just mix it with a little sand or gravel from the yard.
Very resourceful. But Steen, being a student of innovation, he has a very modern mechanical idea for how to pot these cuttings.
He does. He suggests taking a smaller pot and placing it directly inside a larger pot.
Yeah, to create concentric rings near the edge, the perimeter. His theory is that roots form faster right there at the edge.
Kesser's pretty skeptical of this double pot setup, though.
He is. Kesser figures that when they eventually pull these cuttings up, they will probably just see the same small roots, regardless of how many plastic pots they use.
But he decides not to discourage him. It's Steen's garden. Let him learn by doing.
What's fascinating here is how this entirely hands-on trial and error approach by the boys perfectly sets the stage for the lesson Oma is about to deliver.
That's so true. You have Steen trying to engineer a better root system with concentric plastic pots, which represents a very modern, mechanical way of thinking about nature.
And this contrasts beautifully with Oma, who favors intuitive, nature-based practices.
But before we even get to the moon, there are a few practical things you have to get right if you're doing this at home.
Oh, absolutely. These cuttings are incredibly fragile right now. They were basically just sticks pushed into the earth before winter.
They lack a large root network to absorb water.
Right. Throwing them straight out into the harsh elements of the outdoor kitchen garden would likely kill them.
Even though the spring days might be warming up, the spring nights are a different story. The cold nights are harsh.
So they need a gentle start. The best odds for them to settle into their new pots is a few days of peace and quiet.
A bright windowsill or inside a greenhouse for stable temperatures.
But you have to be careful there, too. I know I've definitely scorched a supposedly indoor plant by leaving it in a harsh windowsill.
Oh, we all have. They need protection from the sharp, direct midday sun because those tender young leaves can easily burn right through the glass.
So that's the physical groundwork. The boys have their cuttings, their seaweed compost, and their windowsill strategy.
But before they head out to the organic kitchen garden to do the transplanting, they are still at the tea table with Oma.
And she drops this massive concept on them. She tells them they need to time their planting, their sowing of vegetables, even baking bread according to the moon.
It sounds like pure folklore to the modern ear, but Oma breaks down the core logic for Kesser and Steen, and it is remarkably straightforward.
Yeah, she tells him to think about the ocean. The moon controls the ocean tides. Its gravitational pull physically moves billions of gallons of seawater back and forth every single day.
So Oma's logic is, if the moon can pull the oceans, it must also affect the water hidden down in the soil.
And even the liquid sap flowing inside the plants themselves.
Exactly. She divides this lunar influence into two distinct phases. First, you have the waxing moon.
That's the period moving from the new moon toward the full moon, right?
Right. As the moon grows fuller, the theory suggests its gravitational pull is drawing the moisture in the soil and the plant's sap upwards.
Which honestly sounds a bit crazy at first. I mean, the moon's gravity is strong, obviously, but is it enough to literally pull sap up a tiny tomato stem?
It seems counterintuitive because we experience gravity locally, but water is highly responsive to lunar gravity. In biodynamic theory, during a waxing moon, the energy and fluids are coaxed upward.
So Oma explains this is the ideal time to sow crops that yield their harvest above the ground.
Think leafy greens like lettuce or beans, tomatoes, giving them that extra energy to shoot up into the air.
But then the moon peaks and begins to shrink, the waning moon.
The transition from the full moon back down to the new moon. Oma explains that during this phase, the energy and fluids seek downward, toward the earth and roots.
So the waxing moon is for the sky-reaching plants, and the waning moon is for the underground dwellers.
Exactly. Oma says this is the time to focus on things growing in the dark. Carrots, potatoes, onions.
Giving them a stronger grip and better roots. And this brings us right back to Kesser and Steen's immediate project.
The timing of their tea time conversation is no accident at all.
No, it's right after the full moon, the beginning of the waning phase.
Which is the ideal timing for transplanting vulnerable cuttings.
Because they don't want these little blackcurrant and redcurrant sticks shooting up new leaves yet. They need roots.
The downward energy helps the plant focus all its internal power on forming new, strong roots down in the pot.
Rather than wasting energy shooting up too quickly, it results in a much more robust plant long-term.
Now, Steen is a smart kid, and he has a very natural reaction to all of this at the tea table.
Yeah, he rolls his wide eyes and basically says his dad doesn't believe in any of this hocus pocus.
It's the default reaction of the modern mind. We're conditioned to view gardening as purely chemical and biological.
Nitrogen, phosphorus, sunlight. Adding celestial gravity to the equation just feels like magic.
But Kesser comes back with an absolutely brilliant counterargument.
He really does. He looks at Steen and reminds him, your dad definitely believes the moon and the tides affect the fish out in the local fjord, right?
Steen has to agree with that.
So Kesser asks him to imagine all the tiny air holes down in the dirt. If the moon pulls the ocean, wouldn't it pull the groundwater too?
It's a spectacular deduction. He's scaling down a massive planetary phenomenon into a microscopic environment.
Kesser concludes that this tidal pull on the groundwater acts like lungs for the soil in the kitchen garden.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Kesser's analogy does something vital.
What's that?
It bridges the gap between mystical-sounding folklore and observable physics. It encourages you, the listener, to view the earth beneath your feet as a breathing, dynamic organism.
I love that visual so much. The garden soil taking a deep breath in and out every time the moon passes over.
It makes perfect sense when you think about the physics of water displacing air in the soil.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because this isn't just a clever idea two kids had at a tea table. We're talking about ancient history.
Oh, absolutely. This knowledge is as old as agriculture itself.
Long before we had weather apps, ancient civilizations were relying on exactly this.
The ancient Egyptians and the Babylonians used the moon as a celestial clock. It told them exactly when to sow and harvest.
And fast forward to Roman times, naturalists like Pliny the Elder wrote about how the moon filled and emptied the earth of moisture.
It was just common sense for farmers not to work against these forces.
But then we kind of lost that, didn't we? As history progressed, much of that intuitive common sense was lost to mechanization.
We stopped looking up at the sky and started looking at fertilizer bags.
Which brings us to the 1920s, specifically 1924. This is where the modern codification of these ancient practices happens.
Right. An Austrian philosopher named Rudolf Steiner stepped in. He laid the theoretical groundwork for what we now call biodynamic agriculture.
He believed modern agriculture was losing its connection to nature's forces, right?
Exactly. He wanted to revive an understanding of plants reacting to cosmic rhythms, treating the farm or the garden as a living organism.
So Steiner provided the theory, the philosophical mindset. But an idea is just a hypothesis until someone actually tests it.
And that is where Maria Thun comes into the story.
Yes, I was so eager to get to her. A German woman who, in the 1950s, decided to roll up her sleeves and put Steiner's theories to the test.
Her dedication was staggering. We are talking about over 50 years of controlled agricultural experiments.
Half a century of planting the exact same seeds at different times of the month just to measure the differences.
She made it deeply practical and empirical. She actually weighed the carrots.
Yeah, she weighed the carrots. She measured the exact height of the lettuce. She was determined to prove it wasn't just superstition.
And she discovered that plants reacted best to the moon in certain zodiac signs.
Which sounds a bit out there, mapping the moon's path against the zodiac.
It does, but it led to her famous sowing calendar, the sow calendar.
Right. She divided days into root, leaf, flower, or fruit focus, a guide that is still heavily used today.
This raises an important question about how we evaluate historical knowledge.
How do you mean?
Well, Steiner provided the mindset, and Thun provided the hard evidence from the field. It's a perfect blend of ancient, earthbound experience and modern empirical testing.
So what Oma was teaching the boys wasn't just an old wives' tale. It was backed by decades of data.
Exactly. It validates the intuition of those who lived close to the earth for millennia.
So let's summarize this amazing journey we've been on today. We started with two boys, Kesser and Steen.
Saving drowned fruit bush cuttings from a brutal winter.
Right, and planning to use Oma's free seaweed compost instead of buying expensive stuff.
And then Oma teaching them about lunar gravitational poles.
And Kesser coming up with that beautiful analogy of the soil having lungs.
All the way to Maria Thun weighing carrots for 50 years to prove ancient wisdom was right all along.
The overarching takeaway for you, the listener, is really about intention.
Whether you fully buy into the moon's influence or not, following these rhythms offers a wonderful way to bring structure to your gardening.
Exactly. It's about working with nature's phases rather than fighting against them.
Being a partner with your garden.
And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If the gravitational pull of a celestial body hundreds of thousands of miles away can be empirically measured in the physical weight of a carrot in your backyard,
Yeah.
what other invisible ancient rhythms are constantly shaping the world around us while we're simply not paying attention?
That is a profound thing to think about. The universe is deeply interconnected.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Tonight, look up at the moon and think about those roots growing in the dark.
Until next time.